happy to have so many with us this morning. Red October has turned into Red November. Awesome win last night by the Phillies. My voice is a little raspy. I apologize for that. I was at the game. It was awesome, and it was fabulous. But let's get on to what we have going on with GPAR. You saw a save the date that went out December 2nd. We're going to have our general membership meeting live and in person, so please mark the date. We'll have more communication coming out to everybody about that very soon, about the lineup and tickets and all that kind of stuff. So save the date, December 2nd. Hope to see all of you there. Today, we are so lucky to go ahead and have our State of Asian Housing report. We'll have AREAA, which is the Asian American Real Estate Association CEO with us. AREAA is a national nonprofit trade organization dedicated to improving the lives of Asian American and Pacific Islander community through home ownership. And as you know, we're all about home ownership here, and any ways that we can go ahead and increase the levels of home ownership here in Philadelphia across all communities. And we have a lot of communities here in Philadelphia. So we're so happy to have this with us today. AREAA has chapters around the entire country, and we are so proud that the newest chapter is taking shape and form and is getting rooted here in Philadelphia. And with that, I would like to introduce a GPAR member who is the president of that chapter, or is about to become the president of that chapter. Rose, good morning. Where are you, Rose?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Matt, for a wonderful welcome. I am so excited this morning to be joining you here. And go Phillies! I know some of you are not Philly fans, but who cares? Go Phillies! Because we're so excited here. We have the Red October and November fever here. So I hope you can join us in having this wonderful energy and vibe and transfer that over to the excitement of having this wonderful Asian Real Estate Association of America with our CEO here joining us for this webinar. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here this morning. I know hopefully you have your coffee or your tea, drink of your choice to join us this 1 hour of a wonderful information that we hope will give to all of us and share with all of us here. And for us, with the Greater Philadelphia chapter being a brand new 44th chapter, it's an amazing accomplishment without the help of GPAR, BCAR, Tri-County Suburban, and all the different boards in Pennsylvania. Of course, we see so many people here, including Mr. Preston Moore from PAR, who is also an AREAA member, and all the different representation from our sister chapters from New Jersey, Northern and Central New Jersey. Of course, our support from the president of the Asian Chamber is also here. So we're so excited to have everyone here. I know, good morning, everyone, to enjoy and come here together to celebrate not only the Phillies winning, but to hear about the State of Asia Housing Report. So I can't wait for this time. Just a quick plug before I introduce our wonderful Madam CEO, Hope Atuel, is, as you can see to my right or your left, is a QR code. See, if you can scan that, you will see it will take you right to the website, and you can join us today to become a member, because right now we're a baby, we're a small chapter, and we need all the members and support we can. At this time, it's prorated. It's only $100 or $99 a year, but right now it's about $66. So join us, and that way you'll be in our newsletter, in our database, and we can send all the information to you so you can come join us to celebrate and also attend our installation that we're going to be organizing pretty soon. So with that, let me introduce who you all here for. Hope Atuel has served as Executive Director of the Asian Real Estate Association of America, that's AREAA, since 2012, and was recently named as CEO earlier this year. Her professional experience spans from the private sector to nonprofit association management for over 2 decades. 2 decades. In addition to her experience in association management, Hope has worked with companies that focus on customer expansion. Throughout her career, Hope has been involved in launching successful B2B marketing campaigns with a strong focus on customer and membership growth and retention. Hope graduated from Olivet Nazarene University in Illinois and attended DePaul University in Chicago for her graduate studies in multicultural communications. Please help me in welcoming Madame CEO, Hope Atuel. Take it away, Hope.
Mute myself. Thank you very much, Rose, for that wonderful introduction. Good morning, everyone. Dawn is not breaking yet here in San Diego, California, since we are 3 hours behind you guys. So it really is a good morning for me. And congratulations again, Rose and Emily and the rest of the Greater Philly chapter for the formation, or the reformation, I should say, of the Greater Philadelphia chapter. You know, Philadelphia is one of the emerging markets for Asian Americans, as we'll go through the State of Asia America report. And so it's exciting to actually see a very vibrant forming board of directors for this particular chapter. So again, congratulations. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The State of Asia America report. Tim Herr, our 2022 president, delivered this report to you guys, I believe, last year. So a lot of the information is the same, but we'll focus on some other areas, specifically emerging markets or non-traditional MSAs for Asian Americans, because we believe that that is where the growth opportunity is. A little bit of the genesis of this particular report. We started putting together the State of Asia America report in 2016, when the organization and our leadership decided that it's about time to ask the U.S. Census Bureau to give Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders our own standalone category on the U.S. on the housing report. So a lot of you are probably familiar with the annual report that's put together by the U.S. Census Bureau as it relates to housing, whether it's renting or home ownership. They also put together a quarterly report, and that quarterly report is fairly important because a lot of the think tanks, whether it's the Urban Institute or even at times the National Association of Realtors, pull data from the U.S. Census Bureau. So since its inception, the U.S. Census Bureau have actually lumped Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders into the category called Other. So there's a category for non-Hispanic whites, for Hispanics and Black Americans. And if you take a look at Asian Americans, we did not exist in as a standalone category. So in 2016, we embarked on a campaign called No Other, because we did not want to be lumped into Other anymore. We wanted our own category. Pleased to report that as of July 26, 2016, Asian Americans now have our own standalone category. Now we're actually recognized, right? Because if we're not recognized, we don't exist. So that was the genesis of the State of Asia America report, was to really show the power, not just economic power, housing power, but also the growing demographics of Asian Americans. All right. Start, obviously, from the beginning. So who is AREAA? And as Matt and as Rose had said, we are the Asian Real Estate Association of America. This is the map, the chapter footprint of where our chapters exist in the United States. We're still missing Greater Philadelphia because when we put together this particular report, the chapter has not been formed yet. But as you can see, the chapter footprint of AREAA closely mirrors the demographics and the population of Asian Americans in the United States. So Asian Americans are typically a bi-coastal community, meaning we're heavy on the coast, pretty heavy on the West Coast where I'm located. But you also see that there is pretty much a heavy footprint also on the East Coast, right? So that's New York, that's New Jersey, DC, Boston. And as you can see, we are actually getting some traction in the middle of America. So especially the South. So if you take a look at Dallas, not Dallas, but Texas and Florida, right? You've got a pretty heavy density of chapters. We've got 4 chapters in Texas, 4 chapters in Florida as well. And as we go through this particular report, we'll see that the South is pretty, it's also a non-traditional MSA and a growing MSA for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. We have 40, as Rose had said, 44 chapters, 42 that exist in the United States and 2 in Canada, pretty much covering the coast of Canada, Toronto, and also Vancouver. So if you have access online, you can download the report, State of Asia America report, and you're also able to access archives of past Asia America reports beginning in 2016. So let's just take a look at what's going on with the population, with the Asian American population here in the United States. And if you take a look at this graph, it actually looks like a hockey stick, right? And it's an upward trend. Right now, we are at about 23 million. And we are projected to double that number by 2060. And if you take a look at this particular graph, really the growth started in the 1960s, and there's a reason for that. In 1965, the Immigration and Nationality Act was signed, and so that opened the doors for immigration from various countries, including countries in Asia, whether it's employment-based or whether it's family-based. 1965 opened the doors of waves of immigration here in the United States. And in fact, if you're interested in taking a look at the reasons for why different subgroups of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have migrated to the United States, our State of Asia America report, I think it was in 2020, puts together a really, really comprehensive timeline, right? So for example, in the 1970s and in the early 80s, there was a big wave of migration from the Philippines and also from Vietnam, particularly because from Vietnam because of the fall of Saigon, and from the Philippines because of many healthcare workers, and that continues to be a growth from an immigration standpoint from the Philippines. So as you can see, we are growing, not because of birth rate, but our growth is propelled really by immigration. One thing that's really important to understand regarding Asian American and Pacific Islanders is that we're not a monolith, right? Meaning you can't just put us in a bucket and say, all right, because I've worked with a Taiwanese American or a Chinese American, therefore I know now how to work with the other subgroups. That's not the case. There are about 50 ethnicities that exist under the Asian American umbrella. And so it's fairly important to recognize the cultural nuances that exist between each of the subgroup, right? And so this graph shows you the largest subgroups that are under the umbrella called Asian American and Pacific Islander. So you've got the Chinese as pretty much the largest subgroup here in the United States as far as Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are concerned. And then you've got Asian Indians, followed by the Filipino, the Vietnamese, and Korean. And that's why when you take a look at the US Census, typically those are the top 5 languages that are translated into Asian languages, because it mirrors the top 5 subgroups under AAPIs. So this is sort of like our focus this year within the State of Asia America report, is to really take a look at non-traditional cities or non-traditional states that Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders call home. So if you remember the map that reflects our chapters, or that mirrors our chapters, it's heavy on the coast. What we're seeing in the last 10 years is that there is this migration pattern towards the middle of America. And there are there are different reasons for that, whether it's housing affordability. Certainly in the last couple of years, that certainly has been a factor. There's also the job market. There's also religion that actually takes a big role in decision-making for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. So for example, when we were putting together this report a few years ago and we started including Pacific Islanders or Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders, I couldn't figure out why there was a big demographic in the Utah region of NHPIs, of Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders, and later to realize that there is a big Mormon footprint in Hawaii and the Pacific Islands. And so they come here to the United States and they gravitate towards states or cities that have that have a big, kind of like footprint of the Mormon religion. And that's why when you go to Utah, particularly Salt Lake City, you will see a large population of NHPIs. And so I thought that was an interesting tidbit. But some of the areas that we're also seeing growth for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are states like Iowa, Des Moines, right? You would think, now, why would it be like Des Moines? But again, the affordability factor for homes certainly is a big factor. Oklahoma, there is a large Vietnamese community that have migrated and continue to migrate into this particular state. And what's interesting is because of this, Asian Americans are slowly really changing the political power of the United States. So for example, in the last election, you've probably read that it's the Asian American electoral vote really that have made a difference with the last presidential election. And so it's going to be interesting as we continue to see voter registration increase within Asian Americans, because typically we're not civically engaged, right? It's not something that I would say from a cultural perspective, it's something that we espouse as a community, but in the last decade, we have been, including AREAA, have been encouraging our community members to register to vote, because it is a very, very important privilege and opportunity as part of this country. And so some of the places as well that we have seen particular growth and tremendous growth is the state of Texas. If you would have asked me 15 years ago that there would be a Chinatown in Texas, in Houston, Texas, I would probably say no way. But there is a very vibrant Chinatown in Houston, Texas. In fact, one of the architects of that particular community is Kenneth Lee, who was part of the founding sort of like circle of AREAA. So it's great to see that Asian Americans are moving to non-traditional markets for us and moving into cities that may not necessarily be, again, traditionally home for AAPIs. And I think that Greater Philadelphia, right, and New Jersey are opportunities for growth as well. So we've classified sort of like in this report, sort of like 4 different regions that we can look at, right? And that is because each of the region have typically a much more closer when you take a look at home values, when you take a look at median incomes as well. And so let's start with the largest footprint of Asian Americans, which is in the West. The Asian Americans in the West is, you take a look at the total AAPI population right there, right? It's almost 8 million. So California is really the state that houses the largest population of Asian Americans. And if you take a look at the top 3 AAPI subgroups, it's the Chinese, the Filipino, and the Asian Indians. And what's interesting is that those 3 subgroups will change as we go to different regions. Median income for AAPIs are about $102,000. And if you take a look at median income for Pacific Islanders, $72,000. And what's really, important to take a look at this is when you disaggregate the data for median income, it actually tells the whole story, right? So Asian Indians typically skew the entire Asian American bucket a little bit higher, right? Just because they tend to be high earners as a group, as a subgroup. They're typically, in IT or in healthcare as doctors, physicians, researchers, and all of that stuff. They typically not just have a bachelor's degree, but an advanced degree as well. And so their propensity for earning higher income is much higher than the other subgroups within the Asian American population. And I say this because if you take a look at this, it's like, well, you guys don't need help, right? Because you are over indexing on the median income, and that's not the case. If you disaggregate the data, you're going to see that there are subgroups within Asian Americans that need help, whether it's Laotian or Cambodians that typically have median income within the 70 or 60,000. So I just wanted to point that out, that while from a holistic perspective, you can see that Asian Americans are doing well. Please make sure that you take a look at disaggregated data. And this is something that we have been, we're a proponent as an organization is taking a look at, again, disaggregated data. One thing to point out as well is if you take a look at the difference between Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, right? The journey for Pacific Islanders are very, very different. If you take a look at income and educational attainment and even home preferences and all of that stuff. For Pacific Islanders, it's very, very different. And hence, again, the importance of disaggregated data. We've partnered with Freddie Mac for many, many years. We continue to partner with them. And one of the things that we take a look at is how many mortgage-ready Asian Americans live in that particular, let's say, region, right? So if you take a look at mortgage-ready Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, there's quite a bit, right? There's over 500,000 that live just in the LA area. But it's the problem is, these particular areas, whether you take a look at LA, San Francisco, or San Jose, they are increasingly unaffordable. here in San Diego, they announced last June that the median home value is at $1 million. And even at 3%, that's 30,000 that you would need for a down payment is a fairly large chunk of cash. And that's why, while there are many mortgage-ready AAPIs in the West Coast, particularly in California, it's to convert them from mortgage ready to actual home buyers is a longer process because of the down payment issue and also, again, the affordability issue. So the Asian American Midwest, this is definitely an emerging metropolitan statistic area for which is MSA for Asian Americans. I lived in Chicago for about 20 years and have seen different neighborhoods and suburbs of Chicago be transformed because of how Asian Americans have evolved in that particular area. If you're familiar with a suburb of Chicago called Naperville, that particular area has been transformed with a large population of Korean Americans and Chinese Americans because of the school district. One of the values of Asian Americans is education. And so we tend to gravitate to areas that have school districts. And so if you take a look at the Asian Americans in the Midwest, right, what are the growth opportunities here? Fargo, who would think, right? Fargo, North Dakota, St. Louis, Wichita, Columbus, Ohio. So no surprises that one of our more recent chapter that has been formed is Ohio, just because of the increasing number of AAPIs in these communities. If you take a look at homeownership rate by subgroups, the Vietnamese actually top the AAPI classification in the Midwest, right? Followed closely by the Filipinos and then the Koreans. We talked about mortgage ready earlier. So if you take a look at mortgage ready in Illinois, a little over 150,000. Dearborn, Michigan, which has a large density of Asian Indians, take a look at mortgage ready there, it's a little over 50,000. So this is another exciting, I think, growth opportunity is the Asian American in the South. If you take a look at places like Charlotte, again, one of our newest chapter. In fact, we're looking at forming a chapter, if not in Nashville. I don't know if it's going to be Memphis or Knoxville, but just the migration of Asian Americans in Tennessee has been something that we've been closely watching in the last 5 years. And again, I talked about religion earlier, and we were wondering, why is the case in Tennessee? And it's because of the Baptist Conference that there's a heavy number of Chinese Americans and Korean Americans moving over to Tennessee. So again, you see that religion certainly has a major factor in the decision for Asian Americans choosing where they want to live. New Orleans, because of the fishing, not the farming, but the fishing community here, we're seeing a large number of Filipinos and Vietnamese moving to Louisiana. The Asian American Northeast. And it used to be that following California, Northeast would have the most density of Asian Americans because of colleges and universities. Again, going back to education, we tend to gravitate to where there are good schools, either it's from K to 12 or even going into your college, right? And so you take a look at places like Boston, New York, DC, heavy numbers of not just Asian Americans, but even Asians foreign students because of the caliber of the schools that are found in this particular states and cities, and because a few of the Asian countries like Singapore or China, they find it to be prestigious to send their children to one of the Ivy Leagues. You'll see a higher number of foreign students in these particular states. But what's interesting is we talked about the South earlier, the slide before. The intersection of the number of Asian Americans have actually have passed already, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are now more Asian Americans in the South than the Northeast. And that intersection has happened about, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. So it's interesting that that we're continuing to see the number of migration of Asian Americans in the South. And as you can see here, you take a look at mortgage ready, right? A little over 600, I think, 600,000 in the New York, New Jersey area. You take a look at Boston, almost at 150,000. What is interesting is that the Vietnamese continues to dominate home ownership rates here in the Northeast, as well as the slide that we saw earlier. So I would be remiss if I didn't talk about really the impact of COVID, within our community, particularly the hate crimes that continue to persist. And I say continue to persist is because I think we rarely, I wouldn't say rarely, hear it on the news now, but just because we don't see it in the news doesn't mean that it doesn't exist or it's not happening. Unfortunately, hate crimes continue to happen, and the attack on our elderly, the vulnerable, the women continues to increase. And when we were talking about hate crimes, that started during the beginning of the pandemic, within the AREAA leadership, we said, well, what's the connection within housing? And there is a connection, right? Because there's now this fear of, do I live in an area where I am going to be facing discrimination? Do I live in an area where I'm going to, all of a sudden find myself being a subject of, again, hate crimes or what have you? So one of the things that we did this year was we had embarked on a two-pronged survey. One was a survey to our members, and one was a survey to prospective home buyers and recent home buyers. And the survey was actually the questions from the survey really was to determine how has hate crimes really impacted AAPIs, particularly Asian Americans, right? Asian Americans' decision moving or choice of homes or choice of areas and all of that stuff. So we ask our members first, and individuals, have they actually have had firsthand experience, or do they know of anybody within their sphere of network if they've experienced hate crime? And as you can see, it's a pretty good number of people who have heard, right, or who have had people within their sphere of network experience discrimination. So this is really where the meat of the survey actually exists, is the reason for home purchases. So you've probably heard that for Asian Americans, the top three reasons for moving to another community or home is we want to live in a larger home, possibly because of multi-generational reasons. We want to move into a better school, and we want to live closer to family, right? This is fairly uncommon reasons, or common reasons, I should say. What we've seen is at the onset of the pandemic, security and personal safety is actually now top, right? And so you can infer that by virtue of, well, now they want to move away from areas that, again, they might experience discrimination. They want to move to areas that they feel safe, right? There are more Asian Americans because there are more like them. I remember Amy Kong, who was our 2021 president, her story of one of her clients being offered a job, and it was a promotion to Idaho. And she turned down that job offer last year in 2021 because of the reasons, the reason being that she didn't want to move in an area where there were very, very little Asian Americans because of just the hate crimes and discrimination. So, you know, those were some of the anecdotal type of like stories that we've heard, and we wanted to make sure that, you know, that's supported by data, and hence, you know, this particular survey that we did. This survey, you can actually see this at length and much more comprehensive. Same place, State of Asia America report on our website. And I know that we have limited time today, so I'm not going to drill down on this survey. But one of the things that we do as an organization is to advocate for issues that impact homeownership. And that's why you'll see my last slide is our group shot in DC. And this is very, very important because we took the results of the survey this year to our legislators and our lawmakers and said, hey, you better pay attention, right? This is impacting our community's decision to live where we want to live. And shelter is a basic human right. And right now, we don't feel safe in places where we live, or at least some of our community members. In fact, AAPI Vote, which is our counterpart, it's an Asian American and Pacific Islander organization designed to encourage AAPI community members to be registered voters and to educate our community regarding elections. They reported that there has been, I want to say, 70 or 80% increase in the purchase of guns within Asian Americans. And that's kind of like, for me, a shock. It's like, wow, I would not think that purchasing a gun would be the solution to this, but perhaps there's also that sentiment that I don't feel protected. And therefore I will protect myself. And that's something that we're continuing to kind of like understand really what are the implications. But going back to the safety and security, that's something that, you know, as realtors, right? As realtors, as real estate practitioners, that's something that you hear from your clients is, I want to live in a safe community. I want to live in an area where if I walk outside, I don't feel that I'm going to be threatened or I'm going to be pushed. And that's why it's so important to understand all of these information from our State of Asia America report, just to kind of like assist on how you could help and how you could support working with Asian Americans. And so with that, I'm going to finish my slide and my presentation. And Melody, I'm going to turn it over to you for Q&A.
Thank you, Hope. That was an amazing presentation. I'll just tell the audience, if you have any questions, please forward it over through our chat function. But I had a question myself. So in a past life, I did a lot of work with national capacity, as well as CREC. National capacity is a National AAPI association that works a lot on economic mobility. And CREC is similar, but they focus specifically on Southeast Asian Americans. Do you have, I see oftentimes that there is this racial, ethnic breakdown, I should say ethnic breakdown of AAPI. And that's great because I've noticed that 10 something years ago, there was, like you said, there was like no data on that. And I have a similar complaint across other groups, like the ethnic diversity of Black population, for instance, or the Latino population. But something I don't see as much is like the difference in, how do I word this? I want to make sure I get my words right. Does AREAA track generational differences within those ethnic groups and how that corresponds with real estate trends for the population?
Yeah. Yes and no. And I'll say yes from preference standpoint, right? Or even from a borrowing standpoint. So if you take a look at first generation immigrants, and it might not necessarily be generational, there is this whole issue of, well, do I really want to borrow money, right? And do I really want to build on my credit profile? And so there's a lot more financial literacy when you're dealing with first generation immigrants versus, let's say, third or fourth generation, when they have their own credit card, understand the value of debt for the sake of getting a mortgage, right? And all of that stuff. So we pay attention to those, when I say generational differences, as far as how it impacts their ability to purchase a home, if that makes sense, Melody. One of the things that we're also taking a look at is preferences of homes. And this is not something that we are doing formally, but there is a difference between someone who, again, a third generation Asian American or Pacific Islander versus somebody who's a first generation immigrant. And if you take a look at sort of like just how we consume condos, right? There's a higher number of Asian Americans who purchase condo as their first sort of like real estate investment. Well, maybe because it's cheaper, but because if you take a look at places like Tokyo or Hong Kong or even the Philippines, it's upward living, right? Just because there's not a whole lot of land. And so they're pretty much used to that sort of like vertical living. And so they come here, and that's also kind of like the preference versus staying in the suburbs. And so we're also, kind of like trying to make that connection, because I know for some of our real estate partners, that's a fairly interesting sort of like home preferences. City versus suburb, vertical living versus, kind of like a much more, a single detached home and all of that stuff. But yes, we are paying close attention, but I wish it was much more expanded.
Thank you. Yeah, I asked because I'm a first-gen American, parents Nigerian, last name's a bit confusing, but trust me, it's very the VBO. But I asked because with my mother, for instance, she's getting ready to retire in a couple of years, and she thinks of real estate specifically as either something she buys with the initial intention of passing down to her kids, or she sees us buying real estate as, in a couple of years, you'll house me. And I'm the retirement plan. And so thinking about the generational cultures of different ethnic groups and what that looks like for real estate going forward in an ever diversifying American landscape. Like, do we have enough multifamily housing for the population that is looking for that? And, what can lawmakers or advocates do? So that's why I asked the question, but thank you for that.
Yeah, no, for sure, right? You talk about kind of like multi-generational, all of that stuff. So my parents recently moved in with me. And so we had obviously had to change our, kind of like our home and all of that stuff. But that is, taking care of our parents, I think, is a very big value for Asian Americans. So kind of like factoring in, what does a multi-generational household look like? Will that be, will that have a bedroom on the first floor, or will that have a granny flat and all of that stuff? But again, some interesting stuff that we're also kind of like trying to uncover and also understand, because there's just way so much. But I appreciate the question, Melody.
Another question I had, and please everyone feel free. So in that past life, when we were looking at the ethnic breakdowns of economic metrics per group, we were doing cross comparisons between other racial categories. And like you were speaking to your example about how Asian, Indian, Chinese are some of the higher earners, and they kind of overshadow a lot of the real poverty that can occur in the AAPI community. For instance, and tell me if I'm mispronouncing this, Hmong? Hmong, thank you.
Yes.
That group has some of the lowest economic indicators in the country, in some cases even lower than some Native American or African American groups. And so thinking about how other populations are working to create housing policies to sort of help this group, has AREAA looked into specific policies that would benefit the housing security of the lowest earning or lowest wealth populations?
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for bringing that up, right? Because you know, it's if you take a look at the subgroups, like you had said, if you take a look at Hmongs, Cambodians, Laotians, they tend to kind of like be in the lower scale. And as you've pointed out, Melody, sometimes even below the poverty level. And sometimes people are shocked, even within the Asian American community. And it's like, well, this is the case. So your question, is AREAA advocating for policy so that homeownership could expand into communities that truly are underserved? And the question is yes. So one of the things that as part of our 3-point plan, which are our policies that we advocate for this year, is increasing down payment assistance for Asian Americans. And so, you know, we've heard a lot of equitable housing goals focused on the Black community and also the Hispanic community. Unfortunately, very, very little towards the Asian American community. And perhaps that is the case because of the model minority myth. And because if you take a look at just aggregate, right, just kind of like totals, it doesn't really tell the story. You would think that Asian Americans don't need any help because we over-index on our median income. We over-index on even the value of our homes and all of that stuff. But again, you have to kind of like understand why. Perhaps median income is higher because there's 3 or 4 earners within that particular household, as opposed to 1 or 2, right? Or perhaps the home is a lot more expensive for Asian Americans because it's not just a single family, it's 2 families with extended families. But it's very true that we need to expand not just on your mortgage ready AAPIs, but those who need a lot more help. And maybe they're not just credit invisible, they actually need to build better credit and all of that stuff. But one of the more recent ones that we've advocated for and continue to advocate this year is down payment assistance for Asian Americans, particularly in high cost markets. So I know that National Capacity, SEMA, who's a good friend, this is one of the things that they look at, right? Is because of the inequity that exists between Asian Americans in general. So something that we will continue to work closely with National Capacity, because this is certainly their wheelhouse. But I think that having the conversations like this is going to be helpful for us to craft policies, national policies that we will be supporting in the future, particularly for 2023.
Melanie, can I just make a quick comment? Because I don't know how the hand gesture thing is on this, okay?
It's okay,
as a follow-up to what you 2 ladies said, next year, I'll be chair of the NAR Multicultural Committee. And I personally would rather have us talk about housing for everybody versus only talking about one particular ethnic group. And I'm gonna do the best I can to emphasize that, it's better for everybody if we make sure that we're not talking about 3 by 30, we're only talking about African Americans. But what about the other groups? So I'm gonna try my best to get that concept incorporated in, and I'm gonna need the help of everyone on this call, all 37 of you guys. Okay, that was my comment.
Thank you. We got a question from Annette Collier, who also is the acting chair, I believe, of the Philadelphia Realtors, and she's also a member of our diversity committee. Are there plans for an AREAA PAC, Political Action Committee, for those who don't know all the acronyms?
The answer is short-term no, Annette. Thank you for asking. Many of our members belong to NAR, and they are fairly significant contributors to our PAC. And we feel that there are issues that our PAC has supported, not just AREAA, but the Asian American community in the past. Setting up a PAC also obviously needs a lot more resources just beyond full-time staff. So it's not something that we currently, it's within our bandwidth. That's why I say short-term, it's not something that we're looking into doing for the time being.
I'll take this opportunity to plug our RPAC. If you have not already invested for the year, please do so. We'll be sending out emails in the upcoming weeks with our end of year investment campaign. But all of us realtors and those who work on behalf of realtors, we're all sticking together. And as long as we're all contributing to the greater effort to support the real estate industry, it's good for everyone, including our partners with AREAA. Are there any other questions from our attendees? If not, I'll turn it back over to Matt. Oh, I see Rose's hand.
Yes, I do have a question. All the members of AREAA receive a newsletter saying what a wonderful news that we have in terms of alternative credit that was announced to everyone and as a multi-year rollout. So Hope, can you address on that? And basically, when I looked at their site, it was only in English and Spanish. Is that something that we as an organization can have an announcement in a different language, so that way we can send out to our diverse communities and letting them know about this upcoming wonderful alternative credit that they can look forward to?
Yeah. So thank you, Rose. So last week, the Federal Housing and Finance Agency, FHFA, made the announcement that that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac would actually take into account, or I want to say loans backed by Fannie and Freddie would now be incorporating FICO 10 and VantageScore as part of their credit scoring models, right? And that's a big win because, as we all know, classic FICO has dominated the mortgage industry for many, many years. And what we have done as an organization is we have advocated for alternative credit scoring models, because there are instances when, if you take a look at an individual and they don't have the classic trade lines, then they fall in, they get denied their mortgage application, not because of bad credit score, but because of thin credit score. And so payments like rent, right? Because rent is technically not a debt. It becomes a debt if you don't pay it. That's why it's reported on your credit score. Utilities are not considered debt, but those are big predictors of somebody's capacity to pay their mortgage, right? Especially if you've been consistently paying your rent, that means that you have the capacity to consistently pay for your mortgage. And so for many, many years, we've asked not just FHFA, but other agencies to take a look at different credit scoring models, because if there were different credit scoring models beyond the traditional FICO, then that opens up more doors of opportunities for not just AAPIs, but many, many Americans to qualify for a mortgage. So this was announced last week. The implementation is, I think, still to be determined. I'm not certainly clear on that, just because banks and our lenders would need to really not just retrain their underwriters, but all of the platforms that they're using, which basically just had traditional FICO, would need to change and all of that stuff. But that certainly is a win. Alternative credit scoring models have, it's something that we've advocated for since the inception of AREAA. So to actually see that this, what we've done has made a difference and has changed scoring for underwriting purposes, for mortgage purposes, is truly a win for our community. And Rose, your question, can it be translated into other languages? Which one? Sorry.
The announcement.
Oh, the announcement. We can look into it. Yeah, certainly. We can take a look at translations. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, with that, I think we're done. Thank you so much to everybody for coming out. Hope, we truly appreciate you waking up very early for us to join us here in Philadelphia. I know we're a little bit ahead of you.
No
Rose,
problem.
thank you very much. And Emily, we appreciate all the efforts that both of you have done to re-energize the chapter that we have here in Philadelphia. So exciting times are ahead. And again, I'm just going to put a little bit on top of this, and I'll obviously have to tie in Phillies, right? So we look at last night's game, and the players were going ahead. They were sharing information about what they were seeing about the opponent, particularly the pitcher. And that's what this is about. Information sharing. You're trying to see what's going on, understanding those that we're trying to serve. And this stuff is really important because you want to understand the clients, future clients, populations, what's going on in the city, what's going on in the broader national context, so that you can be a better realtor. That's what this is about. So this knowledge, it's important to share it, to spread it, to digest it, so that we can help people out and that we can get more folks into homes and be more aware of what's going on in the marketplace. So with that, everybody, have a great day. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.